Thank you all for being here and for covering this debate. It has been encouraging to see the amount of interest that is in this debate and in this Senate race. I think that the people of the state saw two very different approaches to how you approach government and what you think ought to be done in Washington, D.C. He wants single-payer, government-run health care, wrote a book about it. I want to free up the healthcare marketplace, make it patient-centered. He called building a wall political theater. I think you build that wall and you secure this country and you end illegal entry. Tax cuts. I am for tax cuts. I voted for tax cuts. He said he would have voted no and he called them crumbs. Do you realize every single Democrat in the Senate and the House voted against the tax cuts? Those tax cuts are putting $1,700 per year in the pocket of the average Tennessee family. That is not crumbs. Phil Bredesen called them crumbs. He shows how out of touch he is with where Tennesseans are and how they live and how they handle their lives and what they're looking for. Tennesseans very much agree with me. They believe in the American dream. They want the federal government to get off their back, out of their pocketbook, let them live their version of the American dream, let them focus on their children and on building the lives that they want. And as I said, I get up every day and I go fight for 5 things: faith, family, freedom, hope, and opportunity. And I think tonight what we saw is you've got one that's going to be a fighter for those things and individual freedoms, and one that is going to support bigger government and big government solutions.
Why spend so much time in your answers tonight mentioning Chuck Schumer's name?
Chuck Schumer is who recruited Phil Bredesen, and he has basically bought and paid for his campaign. And Phil Bredesen chose to run as a Democrat. He could have run as a Republican, he could have run as an independent. He chose not to do that. He chose to run as a Democrat. If he were to go to Washington, D.C., he would go as a Democrat. Chuck Schumer would be his boss. So that's the reason to talk about it.
But he said he would not vote for him. Is that correct?
Chuck Schumer has given Phil Bredesen about 10 million reasons to vote with the Democrats and on their policies. Government-run health care, opposing securing the border, voting against tax cuts. You see what has happened with Judge Kavanaugh. So, you know, I think he's going as a Democrat, and he would be a Democrat in D.C. if he were to go to D.C. Because he's running as the Democrat nominee.
Congressman, in response to the question about the opioid crisis, specifically about the bill you co-sponsored, you said that your opponent's answer was false. In your answer, you had said that this was unanimously passed. What other evidence do you have to suggest that his answer is actually false?
It was a unanimously passed bill. And we also, everything we've done on the opioid and the drug issue, and I've got to tell you this, Joel, I think it's really sad that he politicizes this. We have worked in a bipartisan way on trying to solve this. We do have legislation, Congressman Bill Rockus in the House and Senator Manchin in the Senate, to deal with the language change that the DEA had requested, and we gave them. So, you know, my response to him is correct.
Do you disagree, though, that this did hamstring the DEA, that legislation?
What we know is that the ISOs had fallen off, and we were trying to get them back up so they would be shutting down the